last linguistic guide is 47 years ago. If I speak in some way, anyway, it's okay, I speak 5 languages equally badly. So, the one I do least badly, I must do that. I'm going to try and talk to you about the context in which media function. If we don't know that context, we are not going to be able to do any stories about workers or anything else. That context is critically important in terms of who owns the media, what reach there are within the media. All these things are very important.
Sir, could you speak any louder?
Sure. Okay. Now?
Yes.
When I joined journalism, which in September will be 44 years ago, every newspaper had a full-time labor correspondent. Every newspaper had one. Yeah, the most elitist newspapers had a labor correspondent who looked at employment issues, these sort of things. By 1995-96, not a single newspaper had a full-time labor correspondent. By 2000, in many newspapers like the Times of India, the labor, you had people covering labor, but as one among many beats, poultry farming and plumbing and labor and things like that. But by 2000, it got merged into a beat called industrial relations. So the Times of India had a correspondent and editor, industrial relations. Economic Times had. Industrial relations meant that essentially you spoke to industry. And by 2005, I mean, this was so total, when there were major labor upheavals, the labor beat was ascribed to the industrial relations correspondent. And in no time, you had a generation that knew nothing about labor. So, the industrial relations correspondent would essentially be communicating with the PR officer of the corporates, with the public relations officers of the corporates, or the now called communications, the corporate communications. And they would be talking to the PR of corporates on labor issues, because those corporates might be having some strife or some trouble or some problem. So you were speaking to industry to inform you about industry, about labor. And when it got impossible to avoid the labor viewpoint, I would get phone calls from correspondents or major newspapers saying, hey, can you do the same Mumbai? Saying, sir, can you give us the names and numbers of a couple of trade union people? We need to quote from them. The person covering the labor beat had no contact in trade unions. Okay? Can you give me the names of a couple of trade union leaders and telephone numbers? Because we need a quote so that you can show that you were very balanced. You also spoke to them. You're covering the labor. The person who first rang me up was a person who had been covering the labor beat for 7 years and wanted names of trade union leaders in the city. So that's what happened to the labor beat. Along with that, a number of other beats disappeared. The agriculture beat disappeared. By which I refer to that as the farming beat. Because many newspapers and channels have a person they call agriculture correspondent. Agriculture correspondent became someone who covers agriculture ministry. Okay? And if the person in charge is very powerful, they would only cover, like Sharad Pawar, they would cover only the agriculture minister. And you would be called agriculture correspondent. This person cannot tell a tomato from a cucumber. Yeah? But he is the agriculture correspondent. By the way, I myself do not claim to be an expert on farming in the science of the term. I claim to be someone who knows something about people who live off farming. That's what I understand. That's what I will also talk to you about. I don't think about people who live, workers who live in different occupations, live off the occupation. I do not claim to be an expert on all those occupations. The farming wheat then disappeared, though you continue to have agriculture correspondent. Now, 15 years ago, this agriculture correspondent was covering agriculture ministry and agriculture minister. That too has changed. Today they are largely covering agriculture correspondent covers agri-business. That's what he's covering, or she is covering. They're covering agri-business. They're covering Monsanto, Bayer, etc. And by the way, please see in your newspapers how many agriculture correspondents who cover essentially agri-business today. How many of them have written and told you in your newspaper or told you on your channel that the government of India and Indian Council of Agricultural Research have signed partnership agreements, not contract, partnership agreements with Amazon and Bayer. Bayer is the biggest manufacturer of pesticides and other chemical agricultural inputs in the planet. You want to know how big Bayer is? Bayer owns Monsanto. Bayer owns Monsanto. Okay? And Amazon and Bayer are now partners. There is a partnership agreement in writing, officially, not secretive, on between Indian Council of Agricultural Research and these two giant corporations. Amazon is going to teach your farmers about logistics. Now the essential thing is, both these corporates and several others are going to have 100% access to AgriStack. Your giant agriculture database, they have 100% access to AgriStack. They have entered all the KVKs. I don't know what I forget the word. Krishi Vigyan Kendra. What are they called here? Krishi Kendra. No? So they have now entered, corporations have entered hundreds of Krishi Kendras across the country where they can happily promote their products. And they have the data from AgriStack to tell them what is going on in agriculture. Point number one today is, if you don't understand the context in which we are living, you will not understand what is happening to labor or anything else. Second, you have, just to give you a sense. The other thing is, second thing is, you are trying to cover something. Cover it through the lives of people. It becomes even more important. It's in the People's Archive of Rural India. And towards the end, I will show you some great photographs of workers and working people, several of them taken by someone who I consider today Tamil Nadu's greatest photographer is sitting right here. He is not only a photographer of working people, he is of the working class. Palani, we'll show you some of his photographers. How everything is done, how he does, how all of us do it, through the lives of people. To understand labor and work, you have to understand the labor process. You have, which he does more brilliantly than anyone. You have labor process, you have the context. You cannot cover, you see, it's like, just like you cannot cover farmers and farm workers without covering big landowners. You cannot cover. You have to cover the big lands. You have to cover the giant total. You cannot cover workers or working people unless you know what's happening with the bourgeoisie, with the ruling class. What's happening with them? Do you know that today, inequality in India, the concentration of wealth in a few hands is so great, so total. Inequality in India, the World Inequality Lab, led by researchers like Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 20th century. You know, Piketty and his team have concluded, which includes 2-3 Indians, by the way, have concluded that inequality in wealth and income inequalities in India are today greater than they were in the heyday of British imperialism in the 1920-21 period. And that was a victorious England having won, World War I, having defeated Germany, having defeated the Axis. So, to give you an idea of what those levels of inequality are. My favorite website, I am giving you the data from my favorite website, Forbes. They have a section called ForbesBillionaires.com. I track it on a weekly basis. I track it because they give you real-time assessments of the wealth of every billionaire in the world. So on March 31st, on March every year, on March 7th, on March 8th every year, they publish Forbes Billionaires list for the preceding year. Though it will be called Forbes Billionaires 2024, they will give you the list for the preceding year. For some peculiar reason, Forbes publishes its billionaires list every year on International Women's Day. Though there are very few women in the list. Maybe it's an aspirational thing, you be good girls, you can also do it. So this is one thing that's happening. In the Forbes billionaires list, India did not have a single dollar billionaire in 1991. Not at all. They started becoming multi-millionaires, crore-patis, etc., etc. 96, and we got our first dollar billionaire. As of July 16, I checked the latest date possible for you. As of July 16, the country that had zero billionaires 1991 to 96 has $214 billionaires, and their cumulative wealth is equal to 1/3 of your gross domestic product. Your GDP is what, 272 lakh crores at current prices. Their cumulative wealth is $1,056.7 billion US. Yeah. So that is 1.7 to 1.8 times that $1,056 billion as a share of your GDP is 29%. 29% of your gross domestic product is held by 214 individuals, equivalent, I'm saying the wealth equivalent to one-third of your gross domestic product, which brings to your memory the whole other meaning of the word gross. And mind you, the wealth is not concentrated. We all discuss wealth concentrated in top 10%, top 1%. In India, the wealth is not concentrated in the top 1%. Please. 214 individuals. 214 individuals is 0.00015% of your population. 1.4 billion population, 214 individuals. The current, you see what it is? It is 0.00015%, holding wealth equivalent to one-third of your GDP. So, with that, and it's not even within those 214. Within the 214, out of that 1,056, 40% is controlled by the top 10. 30% is controlled by the top 5. The top 5 individuals account for 318 billion or 320 billion out of the 1,056 billion. Your concentration is in 0.00 infinity. That is the concentration of wealth in India. It's against this that you have to understand what has happened to the working people of this country. If you don't have this picture always in your mind, you are not going to understand the extent, the nature, the impact on people that this wealth. Is it that there is huge growth and everybody's boats are sailing? Nonsense. The COVID period gives you a fantastic autopsy of the society we have. Up to from 1991 to 2019, we added on average 4 to 4.5 billionaires a year. Healthy rate. 4.5 billionaires a year we added from 1991 to 2019. In the first 12 months of COVID, we added $42 billionaires. 24 of them in that list were in the health sector. So you know where the money came from. Now you added $42 billionaires in the same 12 months when the government of India tells you the economy tanked by 7.7%. So it wasn't making money from a growing economy, you made your money from a shrinking economy. That means the burden on working people was horrendous. The burden on working people was horrendous. So you need to know that it wasn't coming from high growth. It wasn't coming from distribution. It wasn't coming from equitable advances in development. It was coming from sucking the money out upwards from the Indian poor. That's what. That is yet another. By the way, also this whole period, you can measure the level of inequality. They are all very glad about the Lok Sabha election results, and we have reason to rejoice for those results. But please have a sense of context in what is happening. In 2004, you'll see the inequality of India reflected now. In 2004, we introduced the electoral affidavits. In 2004, we introduced the electoral affidavit, in which the candidate attaches her or his self-stated assessment of worth. You are giving an assessment of your self-worth. You are not required to attach your income tax return. And people, when asked to state what their wealth is on record, they tend to be very modest. So what happened in 2004? Even by just self-assessment of worth, 32% of all Lok Sabha MPs were crororepatis, rupees, Indian rupee crororepatis. All 32% of all Lok Sabha MPs. In 2009, that was 53%. In 2014, it was 82% of all MPs were crororepatis. In 2019, it was 88% of all Lok Sabha MPs were crororepatis. In 2024, 93% of all Lok Sabha MPs are crororepatis. So some 500 crororepatis are going to represent $1 billion of the poorest people on earth. That is important. And in this election, every party had to find the richest candidates possible, because the BJP has been winning elections by destroying the funding ecosystem of every opposition force. Half the opposition treasurers are in jail. Raids. 90% of all the electoral bonds money went to the Bharatiya Janata Party. Parties were fighting this election through. This election was not the victory of the political parties. People went out and defeated the BJP. Understand this? The parties were hamstrung, helpless, but people went out and defeated the BJP. And you can also look at how the media covered it. The rich media covered it as obnoxious. Who are the media owned by? They are owned by the same corporations. We'll come to that in a minute. So if you look at the cutting edge of journalism, in the 2024 elections, it came from individual YouTube channels in the states where the BJP was pushing. Okay? Except with the exception of Dainik Bhaskar in the Hindi band, which was raided many times over, but somehow kept going. The only big business house paper that showed some courage. I'm not talking only about Ravish, a friend of mine. He's a good friend of mine. I think he's the best. But it wasn't just about Ravish Kumar. There were people of the age group I see sitting in this audience, young guys with 200,000 followers. Some who came in with 800 followers and who have gone to 4 lakh followers. Now I'm not praising these digital platforms. They are the worst monopolies, but they are yet to shut the doors. They are yet to close the windows. They will do that, depending on how much we can resist. They will do that. So the cutting edge, the fighting journalism came from those channels. You go back and see, only those little channels, young guys, girls from UP, were saying BJP will not get 40 seats in Uttar Pradesh. Everybody else was hoping, yeah, bring them down from 60 to 50, that will be an achievement. Those young people were consistently saying, consistently, BJP will not get 40 seats, they got 30. So there's some hope, there is something there. Because those young people are living and understanding the context of what is going on in the nation. They understand what is happening on the ground, and that's the only way. Second, you have to go further in telling the lives. Okay, just to give you an idea, we have looked at one end of the spectrum. Okay, on billionaires and their wealth. Though, just let me give you one more example. I said of the top 5 billionaires account for 30% of the total billionaire wealth. Incidentally, the total billionaire wealth of 1,056 billion is 63 times the size of your agriculture budget. Your agricultural budget is 1.25 lakh crores. 1,056 billion is billion dollars is 1.7 times your total budget expenditure of $562 billion. Your total budget expenditure was $562 billion, and I'm not going into purchasing power parity and all that nonsense, because suppose you're a middle class parent sending your daughter to education in the USA and you have to pay $30,000 tuition fee for which you take a loan per semester. You're not going to get your loan in purchasing power parity. You're going to pay $83 rupees to a dollar. That's what you're going to pay. So that's how I am. Actual transactional value of the rupee and dollar. So it is 1.7 times your total budgetary expenditure. It is 63 times your agriculture budget. One gentleman, Mr. Ambani, whose father I knew once, his wealth is $118 billion. $118 billion is 7.5 times your agriculture budget. It's very, now the other gentleman, Mr. Adani, who caught up and overtook Mr. Ambani for a while before the Hindenburg stuff happened. Mr. Adani was not a billionaire in the year 1998-99. He was not a billionaire in the year 2000. In 2003, his fortune started rising, parallel to the rise of his friend in Gujarat. In 2013, on the eve of the Great Transition, Mr. Adani was worth about $3.5 billion. And then he starts shooting up. Between 2013 or 2019 and 22, Mr. Adani's wealth rises 1,500%. To give you why that is such an extraordinary figure, in the same period, Elon Musk's wealth rose 1,000%. But Mr. Adani's rose 1,500%. Far greater than Elon Musk of Tesla and Twitter and whatever else. That is the kind of wealth. And you can see how the wealth was accumulated. The wealth of our top billionaires runs parallel to the rise of their friends in political power. This is what is happening to them. And when you have that kind of wealth, you're going to see it has to be at the cost of incredible deprivation. Look at what happened when in the 2021 Forbes list, we added 42 new billionaires, of whom 10 or 14 were from the health sector. Totally our health sector billionaires was 24. Now, while this incredible wealth was going on, what was happening on the ground? The giant migrations, people returning to their village in a struggle for survival was happening. To this day, do we have a figure of how many people went back to their villages? How many crores of migrants were there? I can try making an assessment, but it will be a very partial assessment. Because the government, in fact, destroyed whatever data there was. To this day, today in the morning, if you read the Hindu, you'll see government has dismissed an independent study saying that 1.12 million people died during the pandemic, of the pandemic, excess deaths. And they have very angrily reacted to the study. Actually, I also checked the study because 4 other assessments, world institutions making it. Lancet said 4.2 billion excess deaths. WHO said 4.7 billion excess deaths. Global Development Council DC said 4.9 million excess deaths in India. Johns Hopkins maintained 3 concurrent lists of different methodologies, all of them above 4 million. But the Vishwa Guru said 4,86,000, and once the Vishwa Guru has spoken, no further debate. So then comes the migrations, which is happening. On March 31st, uh, 2020, the Attorney General of India submitted an affidavit and made a speech in the Supreme Court saying, as of today, March 31st, 2020, there is not a single migrant on the highways. Not a single migrant on the highways on March 31st, 2020. The trusting judges of the bench of Supreme Court accepted that. 14 days later, the same Attorney General tells the same innocent Supreme Court bench 23,650 relief and food centers have been opened across the country. 23,000 relief and food centers have been opened by governments across the country to help the migrants. Now, if there was not a single migrant on the streets, why were you opening 23,000 centers for promoting tourism in the pandemic? They did not mention that 62% of the 23,000 centers, 62% were opened only in Kerala. Just in Kerala alone, 62%. And Kerala is not even the biggest migrant destination, but 62% of the center. So they were using the word governments in court to make it, actually the BJP states there was almost nothing at that time. In the first 15 days, almost zero. The few hundred years there across those states. So how do we know how many people went? As reporters, as journalists, always understand the complexity, big governments, very large governments, large bureaucracies. One department will suppress what another department celebrates as its achievement. Okay? So, while the government was suppressing the numbers of people displaced, CMIE also faced tax issues, Center for Monitoring Indian economy, also faced tax issues when they said 118 million Indians lost their jobs in April 2020. When all of this happened, they lost their the numbers of people migrating were being suppressed. The court was being told not a single migrant on the highway, etc. If this was true, then on May 26th, Indian Railways gives the game away. Remember, in large bureaucracies, one department will suppress what another department celebrates. On May 26, 2020, the Indian Railways put out a press release that between May 1 and May 25, Indian Railways were proud, and I salute the Indian Railways. They transported, you remember the Shramik train, the labor train? They transported 91 lakh workers in 25 days. And that was the third month of the pandemic. March, April, May. Not even 2.5 months because your lockdown started on March 25th. But Indian Railways transported 90. Incidentally, it's wrong to say they transported 91 lakh. 91 lakh was tickets issued. In India, those of us who cover working people, those of us who cover poor rural people, those of us who cover farmers' agitations, we will tell you one thing. The poor in India have a very healthy attitude, rural Indians have a very healthy attitude towards public transport. They think public transport is meant for the public. Why should they be paying? So, say if 2,000 farmers went from Tamil Nadu to the agitation in Delhi, do you think if they bought 2,000 tickets, they would have bought 150 to 200 tickets and they'll pass them around, and the TT will also, he is also from the same class that they are, or they might give him 100 rupees or 200 rupees, and that's how people travel. So if you sold 91 lakh tickets, it means not less than 1.5 crore people have come on those trains. And you could go and see, it was overpacked, people were hanging out of the train, but even if they say 1 crore, and 1 crore had to move by bus, by foot, by everything else, not less than 20 billion migrant workers, laborers, went back to their villages in this period. My guess is that it would be 2-3 times that. It would be 3 times that number. But I have no way of proving it for you. But the Indian Railways shows me not less than 2 crore workers went back. They were only giving it for 25 days. That the press release. Now, in this, the kind of things that happen, again, you have to tell the stories through the lives of people. In Chhattisgarh, from Chhattisgarh, there are villagers who come as chili pickers in the Telangana region. They come to Telangana and they pick chilies. These are landlords, these are tribals. They are workers. When the lockdown came, the landlords told the workers, you have to go now and we cannot sustain you here. So they started walking back. By the way, in People's Archive of Rural India, of which I am editor, pioneers, and photographer, we've done dozens of stories of people, some of whom walked 800 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers. And people went from Chennai to Odisha. People went from Chennai and Andhra to Gadchiroli in Maharashtra. And they went up to the north of Maharashtra, so home there. People walked from Telangana to Chandrapur, Gadchiroli in Maharashtra. Through Project Tiger Territory, very, very dense forest also, they went through those things. In the chili pickers of Telangana, some girls were, some 200 were from a couple of villages in Chhattisgarh. One of them was a 12-year-old girl called Jambu. She walked 140 kilometers, and that time, by the way, the government also came up with a law, with a rule. No movement on the highways between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. because migrants were walking in the dark. You know what it meant? It meant that you condemned people to walk between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., the hottest hours of the hottest month in the hottest years. Jamlo walked 160 kilometers and dropped dead. 40 kilometers, 60 kilometers from her mother's house, she dropped dead. She dropped dead from muscle fatigue, from dehydration, from muscle failure. She just dropped dead. You can read the story. Incidentally, the People's Archive of Rural India publishes in 15 languages. We will add a 16th by the end of the year, including regular publishing in Tamil. So please look at Pari. You'll see, God knows how many stories on migrants and COVID-19 and workers and COVID-19. Parini's series on Safai Karmacharis and civic workers and the manual scavengers, all of that. Now the unemployment thing also is quite devastating. And when you try understanding through people's lives, also try illustrating your words and data with pictures, what I call word pictures. Now I just looked up the employment exchange figures from 2016 to 2020. Employment exchanges are a very limited measure of knowing. It only tells you, it uses the word job seeker, not unemployed. But it means the number of people looking for jobs is never below, in the last 6 years, never below 42 million who are registered at employment exchanges on the live register. Okay? Now, you can write 42 million people are on the live registers who have been there, go there every other day to look if there's a job. There's another way of putting it. What is 42 million? My way of putting it to you is, suppose we put 42 million workers in a single queue, one queue. If they have only one queue, a single queue, how many people can you fit into a single queue? The tightest you can have is 2 people in 1 meter. 31 inches, 32 inches. 2 people in 1 meter, so that my nose is in that guy's collar. You can fit. 2 people in 1 meter is 2,000 kilometers. 20,000 for 10 kilometers. Do you know what is 42 million? 42 million is 3.5 times your coastline. The Indian coastline is 3.25 times your coastline. The Indian coastline is 6,800 kilometers. Or 6,083 kilometers, sorry. If you include the island coastline, then it comes to 7,000. Even then, it is 3 times your total coastline. Imagine one queue of unemployed or people wanting a job desperately coming to queues. This is what the state of working people looking for work. is like in your country. Now, why do the media not cover this? Who owns the media? Do you know the value of your media industry? In media industry, it's not media industry, it's always joined with entertainment industry. In the stock exchange, elsewhere, everywhere, it is called the ME industry. Media and entertainment. As you know, the two are very closely, they are organically linked. Now, just taking the registered media entities, the media entities that have stock exchange presence, that have all these sort of things. In March this year, the M&E industry was estimated by Ernst & Young. You know, Standard & Poor, Ernst & Young, these guys who tell you how rich you are. It said, these are only for people who have a share bazaar presence, a stock market presence. The value was 2.32 trillion rupees. Trillion is 12 zeros. Billion is 9. 2.32 trillion rupees. Right? And if you look at these that is by the way $28 billion. And then a few days later, just in April, Mr. Mukesh Ambani struck a deal with Disney Hotstar worth $8.5 billion. One man, $8.5 billion, which made it $36 billion from $28 billion. And in that, one individual owns 30 to 40% of total value. Am I confusing you or do you follow what I am saying?
Yes.
No? I predicted 10 years ago in the Journalists Union Annual Conference, by 2025 we could all be working for Ambani. You know, you see your ETV Tamil, ETV Telugu, ETV Malayalam, ETV Kannada, they are not owned by Eenadu TV of Mr. Ramoji Rao. Except for the Telugu channels, all the other 19 ETV channels are owned by Mr. Ambani. Mr. Ambani does not know how many TV channels he owns. I could probably tell him, but I don't think he'd be interested in hearing anything from me. So this is the kind of concentration. When you have that kind of concentration, billionaires owning the media, they are going to write more. Your media are going to focus on the lives of the millionaires, as you saw the wedding coverage, which was attended by senior editors from and one of whom wrote an angry tweet attacking me as a killjoy when I pointed out that this wedding is spending some, they were all speculating. Is it $150 million? $260 million? I said, don't worry, Ambanis will tell us. They want us to know. They're not spending it to keep it a secret. They need us to know how much they're spending. That's the whole very purpose. Okay. Second thing is, these weddings are happening in a country with a 30-year agrarian crisis, where weddings have collapsed in lakhs across the countryside. Maharashtra government officially several years ago put out a figure, 3 lakh unmarried girls in 6 districts whose parents were unable to get them married, in 6 districts of Vidarbha. Now the boot is on the other foot. The boys are not able to get married. The girls in the farming community have changed focus. They are only marrying government servants, however low, because there is a stability to that, security to that job. The boys, no one is willing to give their daughter to a farm. So the boys many unmarried boys in the villages are 32, 33. Unmarried girls in the villages at the time I did that story was a girl at 26 in a village. The chances of marriage are low. So, incidentally, there are, as you know, all of you know, inability to get the daughter's wedding done was a factor in the suicides of some of the farmers. The stigma and the baby or whatever you want to say. You know, many of you know that, but many of you do not know that a few months later, some of the daughters of the farmer who committed suicide, who took his life, also took their own lives, blaming themselves for the death of the father. Even if she didn't, there are half a dozen people in the village to make it clear to her that the father was like, poor fellow, because he could not make it. And so I wrote this. This is what I put out a tweet. I put out one tweet in 3 months or something. More than that, I think it was also. But, yeah, now you look at this society. And our distinguished editor from Chennai had a tweet that these are killjoys. You know, not allowing people to have fun on an important occasion. However, she did not mention that she attended the wedding. She did not mention that she attended the wedding, which itself shows that, you know, how defensive you are about that kind of vulgar expenditure. Okay, the media, 10 minutes I'm done. Historically, journalists and print workers came from working class and lower middle class. From the late 19th century, as print media grew, there was an increasingly literate section of the working class. In the print workers in US, UK, Europe, the working class. And sometimes journalists came from the print workers' families. From the 70s on, 60s, 70s in India. And in India, the journalists came from the freedom fighters. Okay? In India from the 70s. When I joined UNI in 1980, September 20, the Upper Menon and I were the first people working in Sujit Datta, Upper Menon and I were the first people working in an Indian news agency who were working towards an MPhil PhD. All the people on the desk were high school graduates. But they were politically savvy. They were connected with their society. They would always land on their feet. They may have written in horrible English, but they knew what the hell was going on. Within 3 years of our being there, PTI was putting out notices. Anybody with less than MA need not apply. Now today, and if you look journalism school fees in big journalism schools in India, fees, hostel, accommodation, food is not less than 7 lakhs. So, which straight-out society can afford it? There has been a huge change in the class composition of journalists. And with it, the class consciousness that comes with liberalization of the different classes and different items. Now, not one newspaper made an issue of it when India became the first nation in the world during the pandemic to reverse the gold standard of labor, which is 8-hour working day. We made it 12-hour working day. No overtime, pro rata. What you got for the first 8 hours, you get for the next 4 hours. No nation in the world did this. Not the United States, not anyone. India did it. First state to do it, Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh. The first 2 states. Now you've got all this kind of crap coming into your labor codes. I'm trying to tell you, when you cover that, don't cover it by word and text alone. Tell it through the lives of people. What it's actually doing to food in the labor household. What it is doing to health in the labor household. What it is doing to education in the labor household. Now, the thing is, Don't think that these monopolies, the biggest problem central is monopoly. Don't think that these monopolies, that there is monopolies in print and television and your social media, forget it. They are not today. They are today anarchistic and not fully organized because people are trying to figure out revenue models. But the digital monopolies are the nastiest, worst monopolies in human history. Why do I say that? No other monopoly in history owns your personal data. These guys control your personal data, they sell it, they trade in it. If you send a message saying, I'm going to Kashmir for a holiday, you send a mail to your friend, how many advertisements do you get for holiday resorts in Kashmir? No? They have algorithm you out of your intellect. No? You buy a book from Amazon, you get 35 recommendations. They have your credit card data, they have your bank data. These are the most dangerous monopolies in history. But there are spaces there. There are only one more thing I'm going to do, remaining 3 minutes. But I'm going to tell you one, cover the stories through the lives of people, cover the labor process. Don't say that, okay, they have reduced their money by so much, say that. But go and show your viewer and reader what it's done to the kitchen in that home, what it's done to lunch and dinner and meals in the workers' home. That is the way that you're going to tell the story. And you have to tell the stories of resistance to it folks. One of the greatest things that happened in media, which your media never told you, the farmer struggle that took place, never once did your media tell you that it was the largest organized struggle for justice. The largest organized struggle for justice in the world, organized at the height of the pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, it was at the height of the pandemic, it was organized. It was 1,000 times bigger than the Occupy Wall Street about which you read so much. Occupy Wall Street, 8,000, 9,000 young people, techies, occupied Zuccotti Park, New York. 9 weeks later, there was corona. Your farmers and agricultural labor unions were there in full from Punjab, Haryana. They had out 53 weeks. They fought security forces, paramilitary, CISF, BSF. There was a bigger mobilization at Delhi than there was on the line of control with China. And still they could not be thrown out. It should talk of the struggles and the victories and the inspiration that workers' struggles have. But above all, follow their lives and keep bringing the stories of what is happening to people. And I'm just going to run you through 5-6 slides of Tamil, some of them from Tamil Nadu. Okay, these, by the way, are migrant workers in Mumbai from Uttar Pradesh. Their entire education was closed down. And you know, how many children, how many girls below the age of 18 own their own smartphone? So girls were totally excluded from education for 2 years. Yeah. In Pari, we did studies in the Adivasi areas of Maharashtra. How many girls, I asked the reporters to go and tell me, how many girls, Adivasi girls below the 18 have a smartphone of their own? Or they came back and told me, you're joking. No girl below the age of 18 has a phone, even upper caste women. Okay? And those upper caste girls who have, they are in the cities. They are not here. And it is considered a bad thing for a young girl to be having a cell phone. Who knows what she'll get up to. So, like in Rajasthan, that was an election issue. So these two boys, that young fellow, a Muslim from Mirzapur, is standing there. He has borrowed his uncle's cell phone and he's selling vegetables and telling his teacher, "Madam, please give me 5 minutes leave. Give me 5 minutes leave so that I can do." Then all poor children in schools became workers in Latur, here in Maharashtra. These were a bunch of guys. Our reporter walked with them on the last 1,500 kilometers, 800 kilometers from Telangana, Maharashtra's Gondia district. These were the empty schools in the lockdown period. And please, just a second. Oh, by the way, this was the group of workers going back from Chhattisgarh, and this is Jamlo. This is Jamlo. Okay? The girl who felt dead walking back to her mother. This are Palani's incredible photographs. These were the Dalit workers burned to death in Sivakasi. How many months ago? Last. Yeah. Palani's photographs of salt pan workers in Tuticorin. Each of these leads into a story of workers and fantastic photographs. These were the sanitation workers that Palani photographed during the initial stages of the pandemic. And you can see the luxury and wealth in the background and the worker risking his life in the COVID-19 pandemic. Fish workers. This, for me, is one of the greatest photo essays done on working people in the fish worker community. The fisher people community, these women off the coast of Ramnad, they dive into the water, they bring up seaweed. That seaweed, they will get 200 rupees per kilo or something in a day. That seaweed makes your medicines and food industry. Big pharma makes billions of dollars from seaweed. Oh, by the way, you make your jelly, your food jelly, it comes from seaweed. Many vital life-saving drugs and medicines come from seaweed. The women who dive into that, fully clad in all their saris, etc., they will earn 200 rupees in a day from doing that in one season. Palani dived into the water with a very primitive GoPro camera of the earliest thing and photographed them in their tasks. A 56 photo essay is there on Pari, and the essay is written in Tamil. You'll find it in Tamil as well. So please look at it. I just wanted to give you a run-up. There's no time for more. I'll stop there, but you know, always bear in mind the political context that you are covering labor in. And one last piece of advice: when you are trying to cover someone's work, try doing the work there. Today, after 44 years, and since 2004 NRGS came, to this day, when I go into the countryside, I try doing a day's work on the advantages. Okay? It reminds me of how incredibly difficult it is. How my body is aching after half an hour while a 12-year-old girl is going away with that crowbar, digging. And why is she wearing a full saree? Because she is trying to pretend that she is 14 or above so that she be given the work. Understand what is happening to you. Thank you.
we can take few questions if we have.